A very good morning to everyone present here. I'm Sarvi Jain, a research scholar at the Department of Architecture and Planning, MANET, Bhopal. And on behalf of the entire team, I'd like to extend my warm welcome to our experts. Foreign expert, Dr. Rafiq Hamdi, expert speaker for the day, Dr. Divya Sharma, faculty, and all the participants in the offline as well as in the online mode. Today, we have our day 2 of the session, the course on climate change and urbanization, organized by the Department of Architecture and Planning and Department of Civil Engineering, MANET, Bhopal, by GYAN and Ministry of Education. In order to proceed with the second session course, I'd like to request Surbhi ma'am to kindly facilitate our expert for the day, Divya Sharma. Dr. Divya Sharma is a leading climate expert and the head of the Climate Group's last regional office in India. With over 25 years of experience, she has impactful climate across industry, transport, energy and food systems, focusing on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and ensuring a just transition. She is a team of professionals committed to shaping sustainable solutions by expanding the Climate Group's global membership base through partnerships with business and subnational governments. A recognized leader throughout, Dr. Sharma frequently writes and speaks on accelerating climate action and achieving net zero targets. Her advice span across prestigious organizations such as Cities Foundation, Clinton Global Initiative, and the Global Covenant of Mayors on Climate and Energy. She is also a member at the Transition Research Goa and startups like Earth Warriors and Humankind, fostering climate and human-centered design. Trained as an architect and urban planner at MANET, Dr. Sharma has established herself as one of India's foremost in urban climate resilience. She has contributed to landmark projects including the Rockefeller Foundation's Asian Cities Climate Resilience Network and India Smart City Initiative, where she developed the Smart City Plan and supported the Climate Smart City Initiative under the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. Dr. Sharma's legacy includes founding the Climate Resilience Vertical at the Energy Resource Institute and building global urban policy and portfolio at the Oxford Policy Management. As an academician and a trainer, she shaped postgraduate courses on resilience while collaborating with governments on urban planning. Her dedication, climate action, sustainable development and resilience continues to inspire transformative change globally. With a huge round of applause, I'd like to welcome Dr. Divya Sharma for her presentation.
So how many of you are from MANI in this room? A lot of you. So in that big introduction that I just made, I don't think she meant I have spent half of my life in MANIT. I did my BR, I did my post-graduation from my doctorate from here. So in a long, it feels like a full circle coming together, being here today with you all. Right. So when your Professor Surbhi asked me to come here, she asked me to speak about my work, that I am doing right. Although the major topic of your training program is climate change and urbanization, and I consider myself to have worked in this area for several years, but my current association with Climate Group is a bit different, and therefore you will find what I will say in the next 1 hour or so, you will find it a different world altogether from what you might have been hearing about climate change or urbanization related to cities, built environment, etc., etc. And I think it is good that I am able to speak with you about this side of climate change, because not only for the knowledge side of it, for the training side of it, but also because this is one area that you guys, some of you, might like to explore as your career prospect. It is huge, working with industries on climate change. There's so much more that is happening, which usually we don't come across in terms of our learning. and I would like you to pay attention on the basis of that, because it will be useful for you in understanding how this entire space looks like, you know. So, do not restrict yourself to only urbanization or climate change or, you know, rural, etc., policy, etc., but there is so much more that is happening at the private sector level also, that I will, you know, maybe introduce to you today.
Need the pointer.
Okay, right. There are only 2 slides, and that I have used just to structure my conversation with you today. First is the context, which is what does industry action for climate means. So, starting with that, I will just start with India's journey and India's economic transition. So, as we know that we are looking at an economic transition because we want to become a Viksit Bharat by 2047, a developed nation by the year 2047. Besides that, in terms of our climate journey, we have said that we will become net zero country by 2070. So, the 2047 is a milestone for India's future, and 2070 is a bigger milestone for India's future. Now, what we are seeing in terms of GDP growth is that we will grow 4 times our current GDP of $3 trillion today to $12 trillion by 2050. But by 2030, which is as close as 2030, we want to get to the GDP level of $5 trillion. So, from 3 trillion to 5 trillion, we want to do it in the next 5-6 years, and then we want to move towards 12 trillion by 2050, and it is huge. If you look at the graph, if you look at it in the sense of a graph, you will see that there is a steep increase in the GDP that we are looking at. What does it mean for climate? It means that there will be lot of emissions if we do not look at the greening of our transition story. So, one of the estimates says that current GDP emission intensity, if it has to continue business as usual, what is business as usual? जैसे चल रहा है वैसे चल रहा है. No other parameters are employed of greening the transition or renewable energy or decarbonization of industry. If nothing happens, if we go by the way we are going, coal based, etc., fossil fuel based, etc., then our annual emission will rise to 4 times our emissions now by the year 2070, which means net zero would not be possible. And definitely, when we are as a country taking a target of 2070 net zero, the pathways have to start greening from now, from today, and it has to be very, very fast. Now, the other thing that we should look into it, so we have looked at GDP, we have looked at our Viksit Bharat dream, we have looked at our 2070 net zero dream, and we are now looking at the vulnerability. We are ranked 7th in the world on the global climate change index, right. So, we are country to climate impacts. Each extreme event will take us down many, many years because of the intensity and volume of loss and damage that happens because of climate impacts, right. So, it is loss of livelihood, it is loss of infrastructure, it is loss of lives of people, communities, sectors taken together will be affected by climate impacts in the way we are going. In terms of the targets, of course, there is a Paris Agreement. We have to reduce the intensity of global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade. We are very far from that target. We are at 2024 now, 2024 is ending. We have 5-6 years and we have to stop GHG emission, the global warming at that level. So, it is a humongous task. And where I am bringing you by saying this is that who will bring in that quick intensive change in our regime in terms of our development path? Industries. That is where I am bringing you. So, that is the role of industries to bring this change very quickly. So, what does it mean that industries can bring this change? So, we work with very, very big industries. We work with the Mahindras of the world, we work with about 500 big companies influencing 148 markets globally on climate action. And why do we work? Why do we choose as an organization to work with big businesses? So there are two things here, that we work with businesses and we work with big businesses. Why we work with businesses is that industries have a great potential to bring this change because they have the resources and the power and potential to not only influence their process chain, their own operations, but influence the supply chain down the line, influence their ecosystem partners, influence policy for what they want to support that transition to happen, and also influence new markets. So when the big businesses are asking for a change, and I'll give you an example. So for example, if a business says, I will run my entire business on renewable electricity, what would they need? One, they would need to change their entire operations to move from fossil fuel based electricity to renewable based electricity, and therefore they will have to buy renewable electricity. And when they buy renewable electricity, they will go to the market and find renewable electricity, find sellers of renewable electricity, whether it is solar, whether it is wind. What are they doing by doing that? They are actually creating a market because they are demanding for those things. And that is how the market comes together. अगर आप में से जो लोग economics पढ़ रहे हैं, the people who are learning economics, reading economics would know how markets are shaped if there is a demand that is growing. If there is no demand, markets will be still and they will become redundant. That is how things and stuffs and products go out of the market because there is no demand. And slowly and gradually people like us are working towards creating that demand so that new markets are generated. And when new markets generate, new technologies can come in. And when scaling up happens, because market have come in, there is a lot of supply, then the scaling can happen. And when the scaling can happen, then the price of renewables goes down, which is what we want. So that more and more people can take renewables, can start using renewables. Because, and that is how it trickles down. If I ask an SME today to change its entire operation to be run by renewable electricity, they can't do it. Because it will be very, very heavy on their pockets, because it's expensive at the moment. But the moment a big business starts that process and started influencing the market, the prices will automatically come down. This is our principle. This is the model that on which we work. We create forums and communities of these big businesses through our campaigns, and I'll come to that, so that they are learning from each other, they are teaching each other, and they are creating a community of business practitioners who can influence each other and also bring this wider change. So this is about what it is. Now, what are those systems where we can bring these changes? Like, what can the business do? Where they do put the dent to make a wider to scale and make the wider difference. These are the systems with the highest emissions. So the 4 systems that I have shown there: energy, transport, industries, and food. So when I talk about energy, these are energy intensive industries. These are also industries that use energy. One is they use energy, but they are also very energy intensive businesses or sectors. Second is transport. So the work that we are doing is to accelerate the transition to zero emission transport. Now it opens up a Pandora of questions, and we will see if we get some time for you to ask me questions. But when I talk about transport, I'm saying that we have to shift from normal mode of transport to transport that is electric. But there is a caveat. When I say shift from transport that are electric, which is our work, and I'll tell you more about it, I do not mean by any chance that we should not shift or look at sustainable mobility. Sustainable mobility is a very important part of transport, change in the transport sector itself. What does that mean? How is it different from zero emission vehicles? Sustainable mobility means how do you move people? So, it is about shifting from private mode of transport to public mode of transport. It means you should get down the tariffs of mass transportation system. You should manage your transportation system, for example, city transport systems, buses, trains, trams, whatever, run by electricity or zero emission, but also moving down the price so that lot of people can use it, more and more people can use it, right. So, make it accessible for all strata of people, all income group of people to use that transport, right. And also for people who are used to be driving cars and being in cars and having public transport, to appreciate that system. So, those systems, the mass transit systems, have to be extremely infrastructure rich, right, clean, efficient transport system. That is where you might be learning about urban management systems, urban transport management system, use of AI and technology to see that transport is on time, transport has efficiency and all those things. This is all about mobility. And in a nutshell, this is the time that I have for you to talk about mobility. The third is industries. So, industries are at the core of emissions, they are at the core of global warming, and we all know that. There are a lot of industries that are hard to abate sectors like steel, concrete, etc., where decarbonization is extremely important if we want a change to come earlier, but it is extremely difficult also, and I will speak about steel in a while. And the fourth area that we work is on food. And when you listen about food, everyone thinks food? How can food be carbon intensive? It is very carbon intensive. Agriculture is very energy intensive at the first place. Food packaging, processing is very carbon intensive, and food transport is very intensive. Food waste again adds to a lot of emissions. So, food, unlike what we might generally think, is one of the highest emitting sectors. So, we are also looking at food. So, what does Climate Group does? So, Climate Group is a not-for-profit organization. We are London based organization. Our headquarters is in London, and we have 4 regional offices, one in New York, the other one is Beijing, in Amsterdam, the third one, and the fourth and the largest one is in India, which I am looking at. What we do is we work with businesses at one side and we work with subnational governments on the other side. And we do it through these 4 systems, and we do it through our campaigns. So, there are 5 business campaigns and 1 coalition, which is a government coalition. I will talk about it in the last, because I want to only focus on the industry side of it today. So, that is where we are. Our mission is to accelerate climate action fast. It is very simple mission. Climate action, accelerate fast. So, all the messaging that we do with the large businesses, companies, corporates that we work with, we just say do it as fast as you can. Be ambitious about it. So, that is what we do. Now, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. The first line is our campaigns, why ambition is equal to intent. Sorry? Okay, I can use it, thank you. And this is the last slide, so no problem about it. So, what we do through our campaigns is 4 A's. Our model is based on 4 A's. It is ambition, it is action, it is accountability, and it's advocacy. So, when I say ambition, the companies that take our targets actually take very ambitious targets. So, for example, if a company comes to us and takes our target on or a campaign on renewable electricity, they are actually saying that from now on I will start transitioning my entire processes, industrial processes, to be run by renewable electricity, and I will make it 100% run by renewable electricity by X year. So, that is the target year by which this industry will start changing and then finish. So, by year 2030 for example, I will be a company who runs its entire operation across its processes, across its businesses and across geographies where they have the presence to be run by renewable electricity only, finish. The transition has happened. That is how we work. So, that is about ambition. Unless they give themselves a target year, it is not ambitious enough. Unless they say I will do it 100%, it is not ambitious enough. Because hey, IPCC reports, you know where this is going, climate impacts. You can also, by the way, ask me any questions. If there is any burning question, just raise your hand and ask me any question at any point of time. Otherwise, I will give you 5 to 7 minutes at the end. I hope I can give some time for questions. In that case, you can also keep writing your questions. And don't think that it is a stupid question or a silly question. Please don't think like that. Just ask the question. Howsoever simple it seems like, I hope I will be able to answer it, because otherwise आप आगे जो भी मैं बोलूँगी कुछ समझ नहीं आएगा. So let's settle down in that. The second is on the action. So once the ambition has been taken, a company has come, it's taken our campaign, they've become our member, they've set a target for themselves. They have to actually start doing it. They have to actually transition their processes to be run by renewable electricity, which means they will have to stop gradually using fossil fuel electricity and start using renewable electricity, which means they will have to buy renewable electricity, they will have to deploy all the technology so that their machines can run, their processes can run through renewable electricity, because it's a bit different, right? So all these things happen. This is where the action falls, that between now and my target year, I have some job to do. That is the second A, which is action. The third is accountability. You must have heard this word greenwashing. So a lot of companies use it as a marketing tool, that we are a green company, we do this, we do that, we've done this, we've done that, which is good. A lot of companies actually do it. But sometimes people use some of these ambitious targets as a media publicity, but they are not actually doing the second A, which is the action. So what we have inbuilt into our campaigns is the accountability framework. It is a framework developed by a company called CDP, who are our partners. They prepared that framework, and companies use that framework to do their annual disclosure. So every year they have to disclose the target that they have achieved, the mini milestones that they are achieving towards their greater targets. This is how we inbuilt accountability. And fourth is advocacy. So while we do this, while we are working with 500 odd companies globally, about 200 companies in India itself, the one work that is our most important job is to tell more and more people, to involve more and more people in this crusade of change. So we need to do advocacy. We need to tell them what these businesses are achieving, how this change is making business sense for these companies. And you must also be asking, why would a company buy expensive renewable electricity? Why would a company change their entire transition to electric vehicles? If it is not making money sense, it is making money sense. And the companies who are visionaries do understand that this is the future. So all these big companies, and that is why the big of it, the big companies are more futuristic. They have many operations across geographies. So they are also dealing with a lot of their international counterparts, whether they are Indian companies, whether they are international companies. They are global companies. So they are working and doing their trade in a cohort of very, very exclusive bigger companies that run on millions of dollars of money. And therefore, when they are dealing with these people and they are talking about transition and running futuristic companies to be run by renewable electricity, because that is the future, it makes sense, business sense for them. People want to do business with them because they know that in the market their share will go high, their shares will never drop. because they are futuristic companies. They are talking about renewable electricity, which is the future. They are talking about electric vehicles because that is the future. They are talking about decarbonizing their processes because that is the future. If all of these companies starting from 2040 to 2070, all the countries, if they are taking net zero targets, just think of the market mechanism, how it will be working with those targets. The market is definitely going to be green. And if I can see it sitting here and I am not changing my company's processes, then I will be the laggard. Then it will not make business sense for me. So, it makes business sense for me to now start transitioning and taking those targets now. Even if I am sitting today here and taking a target of renewable electricity now and I say I will do it by 2050, very good. Because India has given us that target by 2070. If we do it by 2050, well and good. India can move to its net zero target even faster, right? And that is where the role of business also comes. That is why businesses are important. They are one of the very important element or actors on climate action, globally as well as for India. So, that is where we coming from. Now, I will tell you about how our campaigns work. So, there are 5 campaigns and you will see that it includes everything. It includes energy, RE100 and EP100. It includes transport, EV100 and EV100 plus. It includes industry, steel zero and concrete zero. Food is not there, but food campaign is in the making and I will talk about it later. So, what is RE100? I have already told you a bit about it. RE100 is, it's a global campaign and it's a renewable energy initiative where companies come together and say, I will transition my processes. I am telling you in a very simple language. I will transition all my processes across geographies, across my portfolios to be run by renewable electricity by X year, 100%. So, all these 100 word means these campaigns are absolute campaigns. आप 90 पे नहीं रुकेंगे, आप 80 पे नहीं रुकेंगे, आपको 100 तक जाना. You might take time and you take your time, but the campaign is 100, right? So, that is there. What is EV100? EV100 is a campaign where businesses and corporates come and take a target to only use electric vehicles. So, can I give you one example of an EV100 member? Flipkart. All of you know Flipkart. All of you know Zomato. Both of these companies have taken EV100 campaign and they are deploying electric vehicles as we speak. They are deploying, going to be operated on 100% electric vehicles by a certain year. What Flipkart is also doing additionally is they are also deploying electric charging stations, so that their people, their cohort members do not face the problem of infrastructure for electricity to run their vehicles. So, that is about electric vehicles EP100. Now, why we are talking about electric vehicles? The purpose is because road transport is responsible for 90% of the transport emissions. That is why changing the regime to electric vehicles is very important. The biggest co-benefit of electric vehicles is coming down of air pollution levels. All the traffic pollution that is happening, I will come to you, will be run by electric vehicles. Now, somebody might say that the grid is not renewable at the moment. So, the electricity that is coming for charging of these vehicles is not clean. That is true. That is where the grid replacement, which the country like India is already doing, comes into picture. So, for now we are between 12 and 22% of share of renewable electricity in our main grid, but we have to increasingly increase our share of renewable electricity into the grid going forward. This comes into some of the interim targets that Government of India has taken towards the 2070 net zero target, deploying renewable electricity in the main grid as quickly as possible. And you can find about it in Google. There is a lot of information about India's interim target. There are targets at 2070, there are targets at 2040, there are targets that we have made till 2047. And through these interim targets, we will reach to a stage where we will become net zero by 2070, because we are a developing country. and we will peak our targets, our emissions at certain stage, and then we will decline. And by 2070, so it's like something like this, by 2070 we will become a net zero country. Do you want to ask the question, please?
Yes, ma'am. How EV can reduce the carbon emission? Because EV reduce the emission at the local level, wherever using the EV. But the electricity which charging the EV vehicles, that is come from the NTPCs. So all of the
That's what I was just explaining. I anticipated your question. That is why I was just explaining that somebody might ask that the energy that is coming to charge electric vehicle is not clean at the moment. Yeah.
and the
So
proportion of the renewable energy shifting from the fossil fuel to renewable is very slow in India.
I'm coming to that. It's not slow. It is increasing by the year. So that is what I was saying. हमारे जो इंटरिम टारगेट है 2070 के लिए, उसमें 2030 पे एक इंटरिम टारगेट है, 2040 पे है, 2047 पे है. दिस इज़ ऑल अबाउट डिप्लॉइंग ऑफ रिन्यूएबल इलेक्ट्रिसिटी इन द मेन ग्रिड. सो हम 500 गीगावाट इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, रिन्यूएबल इलेक्ट्रिसिटी तक जाना चाहते हैं ऑफ प्लेसमेंट ऑफ दैट. What would that mean? That would mean as much as renewable electricity is being deployed, that is going to be part of our main grid. So अभी आपका main grid अगर 100% run by fossil fuel है और अभी आपके 18% पे आप आ चुके हैं renewable electricity पे, by 2030 अगर आप 500 gigawatt और deploy करते हैं, you will reach to maybe 22, 35, and by 2040 it will be even more. So here it is a parallel journey, energy and transport. Your energy grid mix is changing from fossil fuel based to renewable based increasingly by a certain year, because see, this is a journey that will not happen in a year. This is not an overnight process. Similarly, you have to change this entire transport system to be run by electricity and not fossil fuel based fuels. आपको पेट्रोल से दूर जाना है, आपको डीजल से दूर जाना है, आपको इलेक्ट्रिसिटी पे आना है, because at least you can use that electricity. As the grid changes its nature, your entire regime will change into renewable, run by renewable. But for now what is happening? Every vehicle is an emitter. Every vehicle on the road is an emitter, right? So if they are not emitting anything, a lot of air pollution is decreasing and emission is decreasing. That is how electric vehicles work. I was coming to, I hope I have answered your question, and let me finish. We are also working on what we call EV 100 plus. Now EV 100 plus is us entering into the logistics side of transportation. So medium and heavy trucking. So what is happening is the number of total vehicles, road transport, heavy and medium trucking is only 2% of that, the number wise. But the emissions that medium and heavy trucking are doing on the road, the emissions from road itself is 45% of the total road transport emission. So EV 100 plus was created, EV 100 plus was created as a campaign to bring down the emissions from medium and heavy trucking. So what do we do? What do we mean by that? We mean by that the normal medium and heavy trucks that ply on the road, which are run by fossil fuel, petrol, diesel, etc., but also on a very, very subminimal level of efficiency, are to be replaced by electric trucks. So in India, we are at the process where we are doing pilot with big companies like JSW, Jindal Steels, who is doing a pilot of deploying some of the electric trucks and see how Indian roads, Indian infrastructure, what type of changes does it need for electric trucks to ply for long haul travels. Because when you are talking about logistics, these are all long haul travels. You have to ply on national highways and state highways and whatnot. When you are talking about EV 100, you are actually talking about two-wheelers and electric cars, personal use, etc., etc. So Zomatos and Flipkarts and maybe Blue Smart. Do you know about Blue Smart? So you know about Uber? It's the electric version of Uber. So Blue Smart is in some of the cities we have Blue Smarts which they run only electric cars. You can book these taxis on an app just like Uber and they run only on electricity. These are all electric cars. In Delhi you will see all these white and blue cars, taxis running around which are all electric cars. And that is how you are changing the mix of traffic within a city system. The mix of traffic run by fossil fuel versus mix of traffic run by electric vehicles. That is how you shift from fossil fuel to clean fuels. This is a transition. That is why you will never say change. Nobody will say renewable electricity change. Everybody will say transition because it is a transition. And therefore, target based ambitions are important. These companies are taking targets. I will do this by this year. I will be 100% renewable electricity by this year. That is how transition takes place. Without ambition, transition will not take place. If you will not have a goal, yes please.
Is there any policy about the electric vehicle wastage like batteries?
I'll come to that. I'll come to that.
About the carbon, so it will be become a huge waste for the embedded carbon, like.
Yes.
Because they have generated, they are mining the ores and making the batteries and then go to the EV.
I'll come to that.
The clean source, but ultimately the global earth have more potential about the mining and all that.
Yes, absolutely. That's a very good question, by the way. But let me finish these 5 campaigns and I'll come to the risk and challenges around some of these transitions where I'll touch upon use of storage of electricity, the need for storage of electricity. When we talk about solar, I'll talk about electric waste, battery waste and other things, battery swapping and all those things. The third one is EP100. So when we introduced EP100, we were actually talking about heavy industries and hard to abate sectors. Some of the sectors are very, very energy intensive. Most of the businesses are very energy intensive, but some of the sectors are more so energy intensive. Those are production heavy industries where they are manufacturing a lot of stuff. They are very energy intensive. So what we do and we tried to do was, can we make these companies energy efficient? So give them technologies, know-hows for them to use the fossil fuel based electricity in an energy efficient ways and measure that energy efficiency. Because I might say I have changed my entire lighting into LED, but what difference did it make from using a normal light? That is not measured, so I will not know what difference I have made and it will not give me any, what should I say, impetus to do more and change my other processes. So EP100 is about that. So EP100 is a campaign where the members double their energy productivity, which means they will be more and more energy efficient in their operations. जैसे घर में भी we say ना, put the switch off, use energy sparingly, use 5-star rating appliances. So that is how in a house or a residential area you do that, but in companies and industries there are other processes because they run very, very big machines. So that's there. And then we have Steel Zero. So EP100 also talks about, so one of the subcomponent of EP100 is net zero buildings. Because when you are talking about energy efficiency in industries, buildings become a very, very important part of energy emissions and energy intensity. Buildings can be very, very energy intensive. Because why? One example could be cooling. For example, in a country like India, we need cooling because we are a very hot country. For 8 months, we need cooling. And that makes building a very important element of this transition. So we talk about solar passive architecture, we talk about orientation of buildings, we talk about how buildings should be constructed by vernacular architecture and local material, etc., etc. But that's not happening. Is it happening? No. All the commercial buildings are using glasses. All the hills are now using RCC to build their homes. And that tradition, that understanding about nature based solutions of architecture and how the infrastructure should be built, that it can be much more related to local realities, is going away. So what does net zero building do? net zero buildings not only look at how they are built, the material that they are using, but what is the type of electricity they are running on. How can they make that electricity more and more renewable based, and ultimately their emission as a building system comes to net zero. That is about net zero buildings. So, we have you must be knowing about Griha, you must be knowing about LEED rating. These are all green building rating systems that are there, which are more or less like EP 100 campaign, where we are looking at certifying these buildings to be energy efficient and resource efficient, because a system like Griha, which is local Indian rating system, Griha stands for Green Rating for Integrated Habitat Assessment. It was formulated by TERI, which is India's foremost think tank on energy, environment and climate change. They have several versions of Griha. One is Swagriha, which is about residential building, the other is Griha, which is about public buildings and normal buildings, and there is Griha for large development, for example campus planning, for example MANIT campus or IIT campus or a campus of a big real estate tycoon. So, those are these rating systems. Then there are LEED systems, which is a US based system. There is a Japanese system, there is a British system. All these countries use these rating systems to rate the building on their energy efficiency and resource efficiency, because that is the future, that is where we are going, because we are concerned about our environmental conservation, we are concerned about climate impacts and reducing these climate impacts, including reducing GHG emissions from the building sector. So, EP 100 deliberately kept net zero building as one of the targets. Very few companies came and took it, one of the challenges, because it is very difficult, net zero. In the system that we run, to target for a net zero building is a difficult task, but it is still there. It is working and slowing gradually we will reach there. Now, why I am talking about the challenge is that the question that this gentleman asked, which is a very important question, is for us to understand that it is very easy to become cynical. It is extremely easy to become cynical, and that will only come if we are not looking at these systems in a holistic way. So, if you are an architect and you are building a building, when you are working on a clean slate, you are only looking at your plot. It might be a 50-30 plot or a 60-100 plot, and you will have a requirement of your client in your picture. And you will, what will you look at? You will look at the form and you will look at the functionality. But if you are a good architect, you will look at where is the road, what is the direction, what is the sun path, how do I orient that building so that it gets sunlight and ventilation and air, natural ventilation. That is step 2 of being a good architect. Step 3 is it using local material? Is this building embedded in the cultural setting of that particular geography where this building will live? That is step 3 of being a good architect. Then you will start looking at where will the water come from, where will the electricity come from, are there trees around, how will I use them to shade the building, what will these trees do, or should I just cut these trees and build a building there and put all glass on it and be happy about the sparkling building that I have created over there? No, we will start looking at each and everything gradually, and slowly and gradually from that clean slate and a plot, you will design something, and when you will look at it from a bird's eye view, you will see a structure that is nicely embedded in that entire broad location. It is not an eyesore, it is a beautiful piece of structure that blends very nicely with the culture, with the geography, is conserving resources, it's energy efficient, it's a building that is working 100% environmentally sensitively. That is how this transition will take place. So, I cannot just deploy EV and say ho gaya hamara kaam. I am also going to see what about mobility. Not everyone can buy an electric vehicle. Electric vehicles are expensive. How do we bring down the cost of electric vehicles? That will only happen if more and more electric stations are coming together, if battery swapping is becoming cheaper and easier, if there are charging stations in the remotest of areas in the country, then I can buy an electric vehicle. Electric vehicles are expensive because of the fact that it comes with an entire ecosystem which is not ready yet or which is in the stage of preparation. Once we get through those stage of preparation, this transition will not be easier, it will also be cheaper. And that is why we want that we should keep doing things. Look at the challenges, don't ignore them, there will be challenges, but look at how can you move past those challenges from here, from here, from here. So, it is a multi-directional, multi-sectoral, holistic approach. That is how the transition will take place. Now, coming to Steel Zero very quickly, I only have 15 minutes. Steel Zero is an initiative where we are talking about private procurement of green steel. What does it mean? We work with companies that buy steel for their operations. So, they do not produce steel, they buy steel, like construction companies, like railways, they buy steel. So, we are working with these companies and telling them that you buy green steel. Now, how do they know what is green steel? So, what we have done in our campaign is told them that green steel will be that steel which is either certified by SBTi on site. SBTi is called Science Based Target Initiative. It is an international initiative who has the tough job of looking at standards and looking at how can these initiatives that are taking are also science based. You can Google SBTi and you will understand how SBTi works. So, one is SBTi goes and on site says yes, this is a low carbon steel. The other way is you go and get a certification of having your steel as a green steel from an entity called Responsible Steel. It is an Australia based certification company that certifies steel when it is being produced through several parameters. So, they have about 13 parameters on which they say this is a low carbon steel. Not all parameters are around carbon intensity of that steel. Some of the parameters are also about how responsible this steel is. And I am coming to the other question that you said was when this transition takes place, it should not repeat the mistakes of the past. Which means when I am saying I am creating renewable electricity, when renewable electricity is being made, coal based jobs will go down. You can't just become an engineer from being a doctor. I am a doctor today and say there is no need for doctor anymore. I just can't from day tomorrow start an engineer's job, can I? So, when these jobs are lost, when the transition is happening, what will happen to all those people who will become jobless? So, there is this element of skill building, looking at those job loss, doing something about that re-employment, skill employment, and then looking at what are the new jobs coming, how can we bring the new generation or the new cohort of professionals that are coming to take those jobs. How can we equip our ITIs, for example, our engineering colleges, for example, our technical institutions, for example, to bring those elements of new jobs into the curriculum. Unless you know how an EV is built, you cannot be an EV engineer.
Transformation into a skill.
Exactly. So, that is the side of the responsible. So, responsible steel initiative is looking at some of these elements. So, a lot of land is needed for installing solar, for example. So, where is that land coming from? How these companies that are saying we will become 100% run by renewable electricity by 2030, where will you put your solar? Where will you get that land from? Will you buy it from an agriculture land and just change that entire field of agriculture into your solar field? Will it be okay? Is it okay to do that? or you will use your walls and your ceilings and your roofs to deploy your solar, or you will create a mix of renewable electricity coming to your grid. It could be wind composite, it could be wind, it could be solar, it could be hydro, or it could be just solar or wind, depending on where you are sitting as a company. So that's one side of it. So this is what steel is about. Now just to tell you, Ministry of Steel in India is running a parallel program which is called Green Steel Mission, which is about public procurement of green steel. So it's not that we are doing something out of the world. The policy and the government, the public bodies are also thinking about making this transition, because this is hard to abate sector, this is decarbonization of heavy industries side of it, which contain a lot of emission that is coming, and we have to reduce that emission. And the last one is concrete zero, which is in a nascent stage, at least in India, we have not yet launched it in India, which is about use of concrete that is low carbon concrete in buildings. Now all of these campaigns are demand side campaigns. What do I mean by that? We don't work with companies that produce renewable electricity, we work with companies that will use renewable electricity, and they will create demand by taking these ambition. I take your campaign, I take RE100, I take EV100 or EP100, I take zero. So I will buy low carbon steel, I will buy low carbon concrete, I will buy EVs, and I will change my entire fleet into EVs. I will give away my cars and scooters that are run by diesel or petrol, and I will take EVs. So I am increasing that demand, and a new market is being developed and a new ecosystem. I start working with a new ecosystem. So a new ecosystem around me develops that is helping me make this transition. So it's very holistic, long run, long haul transition, as we say it. So this is about our campaigns. And why I am only talking about our campaigns? Because this is a very good example for all of you to understand how others are doing it. There are many other things that are happening. A lot of industries are directly working with Responsible Steel. For example, JSW is a member to Responsible Steel, and they are a steel producer. They are working with them. There is another side of steel which I would like to say is, so what happens is, how is steel produced? It is produced from ore, and it is produced by blast furnace process, which is very, very coal intensive. At the moment, if you have to have green steel, you will have to use the scrap steel, because electric furnaces cannot change ore into steel. Electric furnace can definitely change scrap steel into green steel. So we also work with shipping companies who have a lot of scrap steel, right? Merck's, a company like Merck's, and we use that scrap steel. So what the other side of our job is to do the advocacy, the last 4 A's, is to work with these companies and see how we can use more and more scrap steel, and that is where the component around circular economy comes into picture. Nothing should be wasted. We start using as much as scrap steel that we can, change it into steel, and produce more and more low carbon steel earlier than we can. Because unless the technology comes that we can have ores produced by non-coal based furnaces, we will have to make this shift like that. And there are various components that define low carbon steel. Some of them are these. So that's this. Now we also work with businesses, but we work with policy makers also, because as I said, nobody can work or achieve their target in silos. And this is the last 5 minutes, and then I'll let you speak and maybe ask some questions. So what we do is, we work with initiatives that are working on international climate diplomacy. For example, COP. We have a presence in COP, Conference of Parties, and we try to influence some of the decisions that are being taken in these big closed roundtable halls where the leaders of the countries are coming and deciding our fate. So we try to go there and see what is happening and be a small part of the decision making that is happening there. What is COP doing? Abhi Baku mein hua tha COP. You must have heard about it. There was a lot of conversation about the failure of Baku COP. around climate finance in particular. So, COP, what does COP does it? It reviews the national communications and emission inventories by the parties. What are the parties? The countries are the parties. So, how are the countries reducing their emissions? What is the target that they have taken and what is the pathway that they are going to take? These all conversations are happening in COP. So, you must have in the last two COPs, you must have heard about phasing out coal, phasing down coal. These phrases were used. Phasing out, some developing countries said we will not phase out coal because we need to develop, and a lot of our development journey will be coal based. India is saying that we just can't do away with our blast furnaces just next day. We can't do it. You've done this for millions of years, the developed countries, and now you are asking us to do it in 2 days flat. How? We can't do it. We also have to see that maximum population does not fall into the poverty because of us taking that stupid target, right? So, we have said that we have a very clear pathway. We will get to net zero by 2070, but we are also very ambitious because we have very ambitious mid-term targets, which we call as interim targets. As we go on achieving our mid-term targets, we might as well achieve our net zero target even before 2070. So, that is India's position on it. So, we do work with, and I am saying we, but there is a lot of, there is a community of practitioners that is there in Baku or wherever the COP is happening, who is working with the government, who is working with businesses, with community of practitioners to bring this messaging out, to learn more and more about science, which is coming from IPCC. Sir is working with IPCC very closely. That is the best scientific information we can ever get on how science tells the world is changing around us and what we need to do about it. And then we work with, so this you must have heard about G20. Last year India was presiding over G20. Last year India was also presiding over Clean Energy Ministerial. G20 सबने सुना होगा, maybe CEM सबने ना सुना. But what is G20? It's a intergovernmental initiative comprising of 19 sovereign countries, European Union and African Union. And what they do is they work together, they come together every year and they work together to address the major issues around economic development, poverty reduction, sustainability and climate change. These are the broader areas that they work in. So, last year we worked very closely with Confederation of Indian Industries, who were leading the business side of communication to G20. So, we were sitting on their working group on energy, environment and climate change. We were bringing our members' voices to create the write up for what do business want in terms of policy change for them to become an efficient and attractive side or part of the energy transition story. So, that is how G20 become very important components of how these change can come. G20 can also influence COP, by the way. They have the clout to influence COP because यहाँ पे जो countries बैठती हैं, they are sitting on the major 80% of the GDP of the world. These are these companies who are sitting, countries that are sitting there. That is why G20 becomes very important. What is Clean Energy Ministerial? Clean Energy Ministerial again is a high level global forum which is run by International Energy Agency, and it has a lot of organizations that come together and companies that come together to achieve a single mission: accelerate clean energy transition. That is their job. So, last year it was a great moment for India because we presided on 2 major international initiatives, and some of the messages that came from India were extremely progressive on clean energy transition, climate change and sustainable development. So, India said that we talked about our 5 elements, Pancharatna elements on which we thrive. So, our natural cultural ethos and traditions were translated into the policy ask to the entire world through that G20 last year. So, nature based solutions, energy transition, quick energy transition, big ambitions is the storyline around industrial action on climate. And I'd like to stop here, but if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. And I hope it was not very out of your understanding, but if I can make it more simpler in the next 5 months, minutes, I'll be very happy to do that.
No, I think it was very well understandable.
Thank you.
Any questions?
This lady over there.
What is the energy and economic disparity between urban and rural India?
Energy and economic disparity.
Yes.
Why do you call it a disparity? So see, there is disparity.
Let us consider that they don't have it. That's right. What is the difference?
When you call it a disparity, it's basically a question of access. So when we talk about rural areas, it is more or so about energy access and access to clean means of energy. So there was a project that I was involved with, which was around exactly the same. It was run by UNEP-RISO. It was called GNESD, which was around sustainable access to sustainable and clean energy by the poorest of the poor. And we actually were looking at rural areas, but we were also looking at urban poor and their accessibility to energy means. So for example, people in poor sides of urban areas also do not have energy to access or do not have electric connections. Sometimes some of the municipal corporations have actually, in Ahmedabad, that particular project had happened where what they did was that one of the prerequisite for a settlement to get electric connection is that there should be tenure rights. And this was a slum location and they did not have tenure rights. So what the Municipal Corporation of Ahmedabad did was they worked with the electric company and said, we will give the slum location tenure rights for the next 10 years. Would you be ready to install proper electric lines there and give them electric connections? They'll pay for it. Give them some subsidy, they'll pay for it, and it will be a metered electricity. And they said yes, but as per their rule books, they cannot install an electric meter where there is no proper wall constructed, and it is slums. Hey, they will not have a brick wall. All of houses will not have brick walls. So the municipal corporation actually constructed these walls across the slum location for them to be able to install the electric meter, and the communities helped. They also became part of that purpose, and they actually installed those electric meters. They deployed people to sit there and teach people and coach people and train them about what was happening in their locality. Electricity was coming, they will make these brick walls, there was some height that was specified, I don't remember. These meters were installed there, and then they had to pay the electricity bill. So there was manual payment of electricity bills, because this is like 20 years back that this particular project happened. So that is how some of these disparities, as you call it, are being tackled. In urban areas, the nature of disparity is different. So it is mostly driven by poverty and inaccessibility. In rural areas, inaccessibility is one of the reasons, but the other reason is that a lot of traditional systems have been fossil fuel based systems like cooking stoves. So that particular area of work has been around providing these rural areas with clean cooking stoves. So one of the projects that we are doing in Tripura is around, Tripura government has a project called Bio Village. It was appreciated by Prime Minister a while ago, and we were a small part of that project. What they are doing there is giving that particular rural areas, or what they have adopted as Bio Village, a very, very holistic development plan. So they are working with these people to get energy access. They are working with these people to use biogas for cooking purposes and for their other purpose, heating purpose also. They are working with these people to give them employment, so home based employments. So some are working on mushroom cultivation, some are changing their agricultural practices, some are looking at new ways of cattle rearing. So, and they are teaching people and they are training them in these skills. There is skill building element around it. So Bio Village is an holistic approach. That is how you approach the rural side of it or access side of it. The other part of your question was around urban.
What I wanted to ask, India in totality is sustainable because the average of the energy consumption and carbon emission, if we do an average of it, it will be sustainable still. And it is sustainable because rural areas, we also account for the rural area carbon emission which are very low. So how much are we sustainable on the urban side? Are we sustainable on the urban side? Let me-
No, I will not say that. I will not use the word sustainable here. I will say that energy intensity of urban areas is much higher than the energy intensity of rural areas. As we develop as a country, as our economy grows and we move towards a developed country, a lot of infrastructure will be built. And lot of urban areas will transition from class 3 cities to class 2 city to class 1 cities to cosmopolitan and metropolitan cities. What does it mean? A lot of infrastructure is coming into place, and all these infrastructure will be built by using energy and will be run by energy. So when we are talking about infrastructure, we have to see how this infrastructure is energy, resource conservative and not intensive. That intensity will have to reduce. So when we are saying we will become net zero by 2070, what does it mean? It means the same. All the development that will take place will run on renewables only as much as possible. So as soon as you transition to renewable electricity, the sooner you will change this intensity of urbanization, which is very energy intensive. But the per capita emissions of country like India is much lower than the per capita emission of the Western world. And what does it mean?
What is the difference in urban and rural area? With average, we are sustainable.
But there's a lot of different, that's what I'm saying. A lot of industrialization, a lot of infrastructure development is happening in this region, in urban areas. And rural areas are still the providers in terms of your food, your ecosystem services. Rural areas stand for that. We don't want rural areas to convert into urban areas, but there is this ambition and intent because there is an understanding that most of the resources, jobs, opportunities lie in urban areas. So urban areas will always be energy intensive because they are housing industries, a lot of investment is happening, infrastructure is coming up, schools, health, all those facilities are concentrated in urban areas. So what is needed to be done is to decouple this energy use, bring a lot of these services around rural areas to make them self-sustaining, but not increasing the emission. And over here, it's a different story. Here what we are saying is that you convert into renewable electricity so that the investment that is coming for the green side of it. That your investment is not coming to influence more fossil fuel based development. You have to reduce your fossil fuel development to green development in urban areas, while you have to provide parity in terms of energy access and resources to your rural areas. That is the main difference, right? Any other question?
One last question.
So, I have actually 3 questions. So, first part of the question is like the carbon credits and the carbon markets which are going to be available in India. So, how are these companies looking into it? Like, there is a notion that foreign, like the big companies like Apple, Google are buying carbon credits. They are doing energy reduction, but not at the rate which they are required to do to make a measurable. So, like these companies, are they looking at in a way to earn carbon credit as a revenue, or like to buy it so they don't have to invest in the carbon clean energy?
Excellent question. So, there are 2 types of companies, and I am giving it to you as an example. There is a high intensity company and there is a company that is a low intensity company. Now, low intensity company, and this is an example, the low intensity company deploys energy efficiency measures and they are saving on energy emissions. But they are a smaller company, they need more money investments. But what they have, those investments are translated into the carbon credits that they have, because they are using less energy. So, they have created some credits, it is a market mechanism. The other company, because it is a huge company, it has much more higher level of energy intensity, and for them to run in the way they are running, they need credits, they buy those credits and offset some of the emissions that they are making. It is an between the companies. The question that she asked, she was saying what is the difference between urban and rural, somewhat like that something is happening at a high intensity level somewhere else, but the average comes down to be equal, right. So, we are averaging out the emissions by these processes, because transition will take time. Until that happens, so it is also reflecting in our EP 100, our journey as climate group to come from EP 100 to Steel Zero is that initially we were talking about energy productivity, because we knew that energy transition will take time. So, you become energy productivity by the way, meanwhile. Then we came up with Steel Zero, much more aggressive program saying buy green steel, change your entire steel demand to green demand, green steel demand, because now you can do it, because now the technology has come, because now you can invest in that. That is the process. Exactly the same way carbon credits and mechanisms are working. It is not, it is one of the instruments, it is not the instrument that we will have to understand. There was one question at the back. Can I allow, we can speak after the class. I am not going anywhere.
So, the question is that we have large number of initiatives and programs, but the major problem is related to funding. How the funding will be provided to all these initiatives for the developing countries like India, and the global system and political scenario is changing, and developed countries are already denying support for developing
Yes.
countries. Then how will you channelize funding for all these initiatives?
Yeah. It is a very difficult question, I must admit, because as a practitioner and being in this field for so many years, looking very closely with the international treaties, and I will also ask sir if you would have an answer to this, we would see the ideal situation for the developed countries to support developing countries in their changing in their regime. So, climate finance should come from the developed countries, because hey, it is your responsibility, and that is what the COP, several versions of COP are asking for, and we have literally failed in each of them, because the money is not coming from the developed world to the developing countries. And just think of the developing countries still easier, because we do have some level of GDP growth. But look at the low income countries which are highly vulnerable and have absolutely no means to transition, and their low per capita emissions are like literally low, but they are so vulnerable that they are actually at the verge of finishing. Sea level rise, extreme events, they will just bring them down. Now, at this impasse where we are as an international community or countries coming together after COP Baku and Baku, a lot of countries such as India are also thinking about where do we bring this money from. Domestically, we have done a great job of allotting a lot of money to some of our interim targets, and somehow market will also improve. So, that is why ambitions are important. When there will be demand that is created, then prices will come down, markets will improve, and the transition will be easier. That is one, that is shifting something to the economics of it. The other side is what happens at the state level, for example. States like Bihar, states like Punjab, where we are also working, they are looking at building their net zero roadmaps. Bihar has prepared its first ever climate budget. So, they are within their budget they are allocating money, budget, finances to some of the activities that they want to do for climate action, whether they are to build their adaptation, whether they are there to build their resilience, whether they are to support their say state EV policies for example. So, all these things are happening domestically also. That does not mean that we are still capable of doing it domestically, no. I think this fight will go on. It will go to the next G20, it will go to the next COP, and somehow as an international community, climate diplomacy or international climate diplomacy will have to see that time where developed countries come and say that they will become equal partner to climate financing. Would you like to add anything to that, sir? Yeah, was it okay for? Thank you. Anything else? I think we are out of time, so.
So, other questions we can take outside during the tea time. So, ma'am is here. So, yeah, we can have it later. I understand there are so many questions, even I have so many questions in my mind. And it was a wonderful talk. Thank you, Divya, for coming over.
Thank you. Thanks everyone.
She's also my classmate from bachelor's.
Yes, yes.
So, it was really great meeting you here and again addressing our students.
Thank
here.
you, Surbhi. Thank you for having me here.
Okay.
Great.
Let's